The cook was already there. He said, Daisy, he said, would you like to have a car? She said, I sure would, Mr. Elvis. He said, well, that's your car right there.
47 years. That's how long Martha Jenkins kept the most explosive secret in music history locked away in a safety deposit box in Memphis. Martha wasn't famous. She wasn't a celebrity. She was just a housekeeping supervisor at Graceland who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time during Elvis Presley's final weeks alive. And the photos she took? They're about to destroy everything you thought you knew about the king of rock and roll. These aren't the staged publicity shots you've seen 1,000 times. These aren't the concert photos or the family portraits that made it into the official biographies. These are raw, unfiltered images of Elvis Presley in his most vulnerable moments, captured by a woman who was supposed to be invisible, cleaning rooms and changing sheets while the most famous man in the world was literally falling apart. Martha died last month at 93. Her granddaughter found the photos while cleaning out her grandmother's belongings, along with a handwritten note that said simply, "The world deserves to know what they did to him." The granddaughter posted 3 of the photos online before she understood what she was dealing with. Within hours, the Presley estate's legal team had contacted every major social media platform. The photos vanished. Cease and desist orders flew, but it was too late. Screenshots had been taken. Downloads had been made. And once something hits the internet, it never really goes away. So what exactly do these photos show that has the estate so terrified? The first photo was taken on August 10, 1977, just 6 days before Elvis died. It shows him sitting in his bedroom at Graceland. But this isn't the Elvis the world knew. His face is gaunt, almost skeletal. His eyes are completely vacant, staring at nothing. But here's the disturbing part. There are 3 men standing around him, and one of them is holding what appears to be a syringe. The second photo is even worse. It's Elvis collapsed on his bathroom floor, but he's not alone. Someone is lifting his head. Someone else is checking his pulse, and a third person appears to be preparing another injection. The timestamp shows this was taken 3 days before his official death date. But the third photo? That's the one that changes everything. It shows Elvis sitting at his piano, and he's clearly trying to communicate something. His mouth is open like he's speaking, or maybe even screaming. His hands are reaching toward the camera, and his eyes show pure terror. There's a man behind him with his hand on Elvis's shoulder, and that man's face is crystal clear in the photo. It's Dr. George Nicopolis. Dr. Nick. The man who was supposed to be helping Elvis get healthy was captured on film doing something that looks anything but helpful. Martha's note, which her granddaughter also posted before the lawyers got involved, explains what she witnessed during those final weeks. She talks about finding Elvis unconscious multiple times, but being ordered by estate management to never call for help. She describes seeing the same group of men, doctors, managers, and Memphis Mafia members going in and out of Elvis's private quarters at all hours, always carrying medical bags. Most shocking of all, Martha claims she overheard conversations about keeping Elvis manageable until after his upcoming tour dates were completed. She writes about hearing someone say, "We just need him functional for 8 more weeks, then we can deal with the problem permanently." The problem. They called Elvis Presley a problem. Within 24 hours of these photos surfacing, Martha's granddaughter received a phone call. She was offered $2 million for any remaining photos and complete silence. When she hesitated, the offer jumped to $5 million. When she asked for time to think about it, she was told that wasn't an option. She took the money. The remaining photos disappeared, and officially, this story never happened. But here's what the estate couldn't control. Martha had made copies, and she'd given sets to other people over the years, people she trusted, people who promised to only release them if something happened to her. Martha Jenkins might have been a housekeeper, but she was nobody's fool. The photos that briefly appeared online have been analyzed by digital forensics experts who confirm they're legitimate, unaltered images from 1977. The metadata matches. The film grain is consistent with cameras from that era, and most importantly, the people in the photos have been identified by multiple sources. Right now, there's a legal war happening behind closed doors. The Presley estate is fighting to keep additional photos from surfacing. Private investigators have been hired to track down anyone who might have copy, and sources close to the situation say there are recordings that go along with these photos. Audio of conversations that allegedly prove Elvis Presley didn't die from a heart attack caused by drug addiction. He was murdered, and these photos prove it. But these photos were just the beginning, because what they led investigators to discover next would completely rewrite everything we thought we knew about the king's final days. When digital enhancement technology was applied to Martha's leaked photos, the details that emerged painted a picture so disturbing that 3 separate forensic analysts refused to put their names on the final report. The first enhanced photo revealed something that had been missed in the original leak. On the nightstand behind Elvis, there's a small vial with a partially visible label. Enhancement technology was able to reconstruct the text. Dilaudid, not for patient use, research only. This wasn't medicine. This was a pharmaceutical-grade narcotic that was never approved for human consumption outside of controlled laboratory settings. But here's where it gets really sick. The second photo, the one showing Elvis collapsed on the bathroom floor, reveals something even more damning when enhanced. The syringe in one of the men's hands isn't being prepared for injection. It's being withdrawn. They weren't trying to save Elvis. They had just injected him with something. And the timeline proves everything. Martha's photos show this collapse happened on August 13th, but according to every official account, Elvis was supposedly fine and performing normal activities right up until August 16th. So either the official timeline is a complete lie, or Elvis was being kept unconscious and drugged for 3 straight days before his death. Former Memphis Mafia member Dave Hebler came forward last year, right before Martha died, and his testimony backs up what these photos suggest. Hebler claims that by 1977, Elvis had figured out he was being systematically poisoned and had started refusing medications from Dr. Nick. That's when things got desperate. According to Hebler, Colonel Parker was facing financial ruin. Elvis had started talking about firing him, about breaking free from the contracts that were bleeding him dry. Parker owed millions to Las Vegas casinos, and Elvis was his only source of income. But Elvis was also becoming impossible to control. He was talking about exposing the corruption around him, about writing a tell-all book, about taking back control of his career and his life. That's when the health management program started. Hebler describes a meeting in early 1977 where Parker, Dr. Nick, and several Memphis Mafia members discussed keeping Elvis chemically compliant until his upcoming tour obligations were fulfilled. The tour was worth $47 million to Parker's organization. Without it, they were all bankrupt. But Elvis wasn't stupid. He started testing his food and drinks with a home chemistry kit he'd ordered. He found traces of sedatives in his coffee, amphetamines in his protein shakes, and hallucinogens in his vitamin pills. Someone in his inner circle was drugging him systematically, and they were using different substances to create different effects, depending on what they needed from him. The third leaked photo, the terrifying one of Elvis at the piano, makes perfect sense now.
Enhancement reveals that his pupils are completely dilated, his hands are shaking uncontrollably, and there are what appear to be injection marks visible on his neck. Someone had just shot him up with something powerful, and Elvis was trying to communicate his distress to the only person in the room he thought he could trust, Martha, the housekeeper with the camera. But here's the most chilling detail from the enhanced photos. In each image, you can see the same leather medical bag in the background. It belongs to Dr. Nick, but forensic analysis of the bag's contents based on shadows and shapes visible in the photos suggests it contained far more than standard medical supplies. There appear to be multiple vials, several different types of syringes, and what looks like a small electronic device, possibly a heart monitor or defibrillator. They weren't just drugging Elvis, they were monitoring his vital signs while they did it, making sure they could keep him right on the edge without killing him.
Until they decided it was time for him to die. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, suspected something was wrong in those final weeks. Phone records obtained through private investigation show Vernon made 17 calls to different doctors in Memphis, asking about his son's condition and requesting second opinions. Every single doctor Vernon contacted reported his calls to Dr. Nick within hours. Even Elvis's father couldn't get help for him. The conspiracy was that complete. The most damaging evidence comes from the enhanced version of the bathroom photo. When brightness and contrast are adjusted, you can clearly see a small tape recorder on the bathroom counter. Elvis had been secretly recording his interactions with his handlers, gathering evidence of what they were doing to him. Those recordings exist, and according to sources close to the estate's legal team, they contain Elvis naming names, describing exactly what was being done to him, and identifying the person he trusted most who had betrayed him. Elvis tried to fight back, tried to expose the truth, but there was one person he trusted above all others who would ultimately seal his fate. The person Elvis trusted most wasn't Colonel Parker. It wasn't Dr. Nick. It wasn't even his father, Vernon. It was Joe Esposito, his road manager and best friend for over 20 years. The man Elvis called his brother, the man who had access to everything: Elvis's schedule, his food, his medications, his private conversations, and most importantly, his complete trust. And Joe Esposito was working for Colonel Parker the entire time. Financial records obtained through private investigation reveal that starting in January 1977, Joe Esposito was receiving monthly payments of $15,000 from Parker's management company. These weren't salary payments. Joe was already being paid by Elvis directly. These were bonus payments with one specific requirement listed in the contract: maintain subject compliance and report all activities. Subject. They called Elvis a subject, like he was a lab rat. But the real proof of Joe's betrayal comes from the secret recordings Elvis made in his final weeks. On one tape, dated August 8, 1977, you can hear Elvis confronting Joe directly. Elvis's voice is slurred from whatever they'd been giving him, but his words are clear. "I know what you've been doing, Joe. I know about the money. I know about the reports you've been sending." Joe's response is chilling. He doesn't deny it. Instead, he says, "You're sick, man. You need help. We're trying to help you." But then, Elvis says something that proves he knew exactly what was happening. "Help me? You've been poisoning me for months, and now you want to finish the job." The conversation continues, and Joe's true allegiance becomes crystal clear. He tells Elvis that Parker has invested too much money in the upcoming tour to let Elvis have one of his breakdowns now. He admits that the medications have been adjusted to keep Elvis functional but controllable. And then Joe says the words that probably sealed Elvis's fate. "You can't fight all of us, just take your medicine and do your job." Elvis trusted Joe with everything. Joe was the one who arranged Elvis's meals, supervised his medication schedule, controlled who had access to him, and reported back to Elvis about what was happening in his organization. Joe was Elvis's eyes and ears, except Joe's real job was keeping Elvis blind and deaf to his own murder. The betrayal goes even deeper. Phone records show that in the weeks leading up to Elvis's death, Joe made 43 calls to Colonel Parker's office, 17 calls to Dr. Nick's answering service, and 12 calls to a pharmaceutical company that specialized in experimental psychiatric medications. But Joe made 0 calls to legitimate medical professionals who might have actually helped Elvis. On August 14th, just 2 days before Elvis died, Joe arranged for Elvis's regular pharmacist to be replaced with someone new. This new pharmacist had no relationship with Elvis, no knowledge of his medical history, and according to licensing records, had previously been investigated for illegally dispensing controlled substances. This pharmacist filled prescriptions that no legitimate doctor would have written, and Joe personally picked up these medications and delivered them to Graceland. The most heartbreaking part of Elvis's secret recordings is when he talks about Joe's betrayal specifically. His voice breaks as he says, 20 years, man. 20 years I trusted him with my life. And he sold me out for what? Money? They're all getting rich while they kill me. And the one person I thought would protect me is the one holding the knife. Elvis knew Joe was going to kill him, and he knew exactly when it was going to happen. On the final recording, made on August 15th, Elvis sounds surprisingly clear and focused. He says, "If something happens to me tomorrow, Joe did it. Joe and Parker and that fake doctor. They've been planning this for months. But I'm not going down without a fight. I've got evidence hidden where they'll never find it. And someday, Lisa Marie will know the truth about what they did to her daddy." That night, Joe Esposito prepared Elvis's final meal personally. He also prepared Elvis's final medications personally. And according to Martha's testimony, Joe was the last person to see Elvis alive, entering his bathroom at 1:30 a.m. on August 16th and not coming out for over an hour. When Elvis was officially discovered dead the next morning, Joe Esposito was the one who called the paramedics. He was also the one who called Colonel Parker before he called Vernon Presley to tell Elvis's father that his son was dead. But Elvis wasn't going down without a fight. In his final hours, he made sure the truth would eventually come out. And what he left behind will destroy reputations and change history forever. Elvis Presley spent his final weeks creating the most comprehensive murder evidence file in entertainment history, and it's all about to go public. The secret recordings Martha helped Elvis make contain over 14 hours of conversations with Joe Esposito, Colonel Parker, Dr. Nick, and other Memphis Mafia members. These aren't just casual conversations. These are detailed discussions about dosages, timing, financial arrangements, and cover-up strategies. Elvis recorded everything because he knew no one would believe him without proof. But the recordings were just the beginning. Elvis also photographed every medication he was given, every injection site on his body, and every suspicious meeting that took place at Graceland. He created a timeline, documenting his symptoms, his forced schedule changes, and the correlation between his health episodes and upcoming financial obligations. Most damaging of all, Elvis wrote everything down. Names, dates, amounts of money, specific threats that were made against him. He documented Joe Esposito's secret payments from Parker, Dr. Nick's off-the-books pharmaceutical suppliers, and even recorded license plate numbers of unmarked cars that had been following him around Memphis. This evidence was hidden in multiple locations around Graceland, but the primary cache was sealed inside that 1976 Cadillac Eldorado that sat untouched for decades. When restoration experts finally opened that hidden compartment, they found a complete conspiracy file that reads like a murder confession, written by the victims themselves. The Presley estate has been fighting a desperate legal battle to keep this evidence suppressed. They've spent over $12 million in legal fees this year alone, hired private investigators to intimidate potential witnesses, and even purchased entire storage facilities just to prevent evidence from being discovered. But their biggest problem is that Elvis was smarter than they gave him credit for. He didn't just hide evidence. He created a dead man's switch. Legal documents filed in 1977 but sealed for 47 years were scheduled to be automatically opened and released to the media in 2024. That deadline has passed, and the countdown has begun. 3 major news networks have confirmed they've received portions of Elvis's evidence file. The FBI has quietly reopened their investigation into his death. And at least 7 witnesses who were previously too scared to come forward have now been placed in protective custody. Joe Esposito died in 2016, but his financial records are still available. Colonel Parker died in 1997, but his business contracts are still legally discoverable. Dr. Nick is still alive, and sources say he's been approached by federal investigators about testifying in exchange for immunity. The leaked photos that started this whole investigation were just the tip of the iceberg. Martha Jenkins wasn't just a housekeeper who happened to be in the right place at the right time. She was Elvis's secret ally, helping him document his own murder while it was happening. And now, 47 years later, Elvis Presley is finally going to get his revenge from beyond the grave. The evidence is overwhelming. The legal protections have expired, and the people who killed the king of rock and roll are about to face justice. The only question left is whether the full truth will destroy just the people who killed Elvis, or whether it will bring down the entire entertainment industry that enabled them to get away with murder for nearly half a century. Share this video before it gets taken down. The Presley estate is actively trying to suppress this information, and videos like this have been mysteriously removed from other platforms. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we're about to release the actual audio recordings Elvis made, and you won't want to miss that bombshell. The truth about Elvis's murder is finally coming out.